What's up, homeschoolers? I want to talk to you today about two current events, two educational situations that are unfortunate but have been in the news recently. And I want to use this to segue into why it is so important that we have educational options for our children. So I'm just going to share with you. I want to read this article, parts of it, to make sure that I get the facts straight before I explain or discuss what is going on in the educational landscape. So recently in Plano, Texas, I live in Texas, so this is a real issue for me. There was an investigation by school officials in Texas and the police because a mother of a 13-year-old boy claimed that classmates bullied and abused him at a sleepover that he was attending. So she said that these boys bullied and abused him. They shot him with BB guns, they hit him in his sleep, and they called him racial slurs. And this little boy is 13. He had been being bullied throughout the year, but his mom, for whatever reasons, we as mothers want to see our kids be included, she allowed him to attend this sleepover. And the result was that there was a video that she uploaded where these boys forced her son to, so boys who allegedly forced him to drink their urine and abused him were white. So there is definitely a racial component to this situation of bullying. But here's the thing, when she went to the Plano Independent School District, um, at first about the bullying allegations, the school district did not respond. She says that she reported the previous bullying incidents and that she received no help from school staff. This this situation is traumatic, it's hurtful, especially for any mother of a son, but especially for black mothers. I have a son, and to think that he could be abused and bullied both in school and out of school, and that he basically has nowhere to turn other than to the police, is just tragic. He's going to need counseling and God knows what else after this situation. But here's the thing that I think this really points to, and something that I really want to discuss, and that is the fact that we as parents, especially as black parents, need to understand that we have real options. We do not have to continue to plead and beg for our kids' safety, protection, um, voices. We don't have to continue to beg a broken system that wasn't designed for us anyway. We don't have to continue to fight with them, to fight a system or an institution while our children suffer. You know, everybody cannot afford private school, but homeschooling is a real and viable option. Homeschooling can provide this child's family as well as himself the time to heal, to recover, to be discipled, um, to focus on, you know, having his emotional needs met in regards to healing from this trauma. And yet, I hear so many people, while people have grown more open to homeschooling, there are still a lot of people, especially within the black community, I would say, who are still like closed to homeschool. And here's the thing, how long are we going to continue to hear about these stories where abuse, racism, discrimination happens, and yet, and we have continue to have parents who are hurt. We continue to have parents who are outraged. We continue to have children who are traumatized before we recognize that there is power in having educational choice. And that leads me to, like, we I did a video previously about why black homeschoolers need each other. We have a strong homeschool community online. Okay. So there's plenty of black face homeschool Facebook groups and whatnot, but there really needs to be local, in person co ops, um, communities that form to really embrace homeschoolers, but especially black homeschoolers, okay? Especially in situations where they have been traumatized and made to feel like less than human. They need to be embraced and nurtured in a community that accepts them, that hears them, that sees them as human, as people, and not as a financial payout from the government, because um, federal funding goes to the schools, um, and not as a statistic. Okay. Let me just read some of the statistics about bullying from the National Bullying Prevention Center and the U.S. Department of Board of Education. So it says, so one out of every five students reports being bullied. That's including or in spite of all of these bullying prevention programs that have recently been put out in the schools. Black and Hispanic students are more likely to be bullied. They're also more likely to be disciplined and arrested. They 64% of young adults report being bullied by a teacher. 93% of high school and college students identified at least one teacher as a bully in their school. And here's the thing that is really egregious to me. The U.S. Department Board of Education found that black students were significantly more likely than whites to be bullied once or twice per week. Blacks were more likely than whites to be bullied by the spreading of false rumors, being insulted, called names, and by acts and threats of violence. We cannot continue to subject our children to this kind of abuse in schools, and then turn around and be ready to fight a system while we spend years fighting a system or an institution for all of these different cases, while we spend uh money tied up in lawsuits for years. Our kids are being traumatized, and homeschooling requires sacrifice, but it is rewarding, and it is a viable option. We have to change our mindsets. However, we can't fight and rant and rave against a system wanting them to do what we aren't willing to do for ourselves, for our own children. If we aren't willing to educate them, if we aren't willing to disciple them, if we aren't willing to nurture them and to find alternative means that are more healthy, we can't get upset when the education, or the school district, rather, the school district or the school turns a blind eye to bullying or abuse. We can't continue to do that, because here's the thing: we don't have to deal with that. There are plenty of single parents out here homeschooling, and it's not easy. But there are plenty of single parents out here homeschooling. There are plenty of people from different walks of life that are homeschoolers, and it's time out for these kinds of tragic events. And I really believe this is where the church, especially the black church, has a gospel moment where they can really extend grace and really reach out to the community in a tangible, meaningful way. And that's by, a lot of these churches um, sit vacant throughout the week. Imagine if, at a discounted rate, because it takes a lot of money to operate facilities. I'm not saying that it doesn't. But imagine if some of these mega churches or some of these medium sized or even smaller churches open their doors and allowed homeschooling families to have a homeschool co op to build community and relationships and whatnot. Because here's the deal, the truth of the matter is, yes, there are some Christian schools, for example, Christian private schools, but how many people that find themselves in these types of situations, like this mother in Plano, can immediately step up about doing about face and put their child in a private school and afford it? Okay, so I just think that this is an opportunity that we have as a church, that homeschoolers need to be able to, parents need to be able to know and feel confident that they have viable options, they have a community that can embrace them and meet them where they are in their need. Okay. And then the second article that I want to talk about that is just as egregious, but it has to do with this child in Baltimore who has failed 22 classes and been absent 272 days over his first 3 years of high school. And his mom didn't know about it for the longest. She says that she has three children. I heard on the news, I'm not sure if I heard it correctly, but that she works three jobs. But her son basically has a 0.13 g.p.a, and that is considered, in terms of the ranking of the Baltimore school he's in, he is still considered near the top half of the class with a 0.13 GPA. Please do not come and tell me that you, as a parent, as a homeschooling parent, cannot do better than this. This child has only passed three classes in 3 years, and this is you. I'm just speechless. Um, we can do better than this. Homeschooling is, there are many ways to homeschool. There are many options out there. And again, this is just another example of being at the mercy of an educational institution that doesn't value its students. And we keep banging our heads against the wall, railing against this when we can do something about this. And here's the thing, if enough of disgruntled parents pulled their kids out of school, public school that is, and decided, you know what, I'm going to homeschool my child, I'm going to come together with other homeschoolers within the community, and we're going to do what needs to be done for our children, that's a it might force the institution to really take purview or take survey of how they're doing things. Because here's the thing, it's not a money issue. There are millions of dollars being pushed and poured into the school districts. It's not an issue necessarily of just money. Homeschoolers are able to homeschool their kids, and those kids thrive with less money, with less resources. We don't have state of the art labs in our classrooms. We don't have fume hoods. We don't have half the stuff that some of these public schools are privileged to have. But we do, the statistics show that statistically on standardized tests, homeschoolers do better. But homeschooling addresses not just the academic needs, but the emotional needs of our children. This child is now being placed, at the end of the article, it says that this child is being placed in an accelerated program so that he can graduate sooner. But what consolation is that really? He has all these years of not taking all of this time. um, going through these classes and basically has nothing to show for it. And this is supposed to be what it is. The mother says that she didn't know that her child was failing, even though the school district said that they send out automated phone calls and whatnot. But I guarantee you, she would know how her child is doing if she was homeschooling him, or if she had him in some hybrid homeschool where she could maybe send him to class once per week and then he worked at home. We as parents have play a role. We as parents play a role in our kids' education, in our kids valuing education, and we have a role to play in not just fight to reform an institution, but really in the fight to raise our children. And it is time that we evaluate, what sacrifices do I need to make in order for my children to be better off? What do I need to do? Um, what steps can I take? Who can I turn to in order to ensure that my children have what they need? So, it is important for us as parents to take some responsibility. And I'm not saying that these parents did not, because that's not what I'm saying. But we can take an active role in our kids' education. We can make adjustments, we can make sacrifices. It's doable. It's not necessarily easy, but with a community surrounding us and encouraging us and sharing resources with us, it's most definitely better than these two situations that I've just discussed. Something has to give. And I can guarantee you that we will have to make a change before some of these educational institutions are going to change and do what's right. I think that the church has a role to play. I'm speaking specifically in these situations. Both of these children were Black. The Black church has a role that they can play in terms of helping to facilitate community by opening their doors just once a week, just once a week, to allow homeschoolers to gather and meet and have a homeschool co-op. And it's a chance to present the gospel, because here's the thing: both of these children, both of these families have been traumatized. And as a Christian homeschooler, um, we this is a prime opportunity to disciple these students, these children and these families, to walk alongside them. So what are we doing about this other than complaining about the institution, the educational institution? What are we really doing about this? Yes, we can advocate for change, we can write our congress people. Those are all necessary things, but in the meantime, what are we tangibly immediately doing to improve the situation for our children? So I want to hear what you think in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about this. Am I completely missing the boat?